this in 1999, back when I think a lot of people in the audience came to get day trading tips, and so times have certainly changed since then. I wanted to make a few very quick announcements. We're sorry about the delay. There was some traffic, and so we wanted to make sure that we were fully paneled before we started. The first announcement that I would like to, before I do that, by a show of hands, how many people are here for the first time tonight? Go ahead and raise your hands if you're here. Okay, well, welcome. Welcome. We are a nonprofit organization, all volunteer. We do this because we're in the wireless industry, and we love wireless, and we want to get people together and give you a chance to meet each other. A lot of great conversations always go on at our events. We enjoy that. We're also working with local universities to try to encourage students to study wireless as a field of interest. As most of you may know, it's sometimes a little hard to hire students coming out of school who have actually focused on wireless or analog RF technology. So one of our missions in the past couple of years has been to work with the universities to allow the students to attend our events for free. So by a show of hands, how many people here tonight are students? Please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Come on, put them up high. Yeah, okay. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
How many of you want to be students?
Well, now that you know that you can get it for free, how many people are going to go back to college? Raise your hand. Okay. So I wanted to make an announcement that in December we're going to host our, we're going to do a small cells event at Qualcomm. It's on December 11th. And it's going to be also our WCA holiday party. So for those of you who have attended WCA before, you know every year we get together, do a retrospective on the previous year and get everyone together. So please join us at Qualcomm on December 11th. I would also like to make a really great announcement. For those of you who know Applied Wave Research, which was a company that was purchased by NI a few years ago, I wanted to announce that Applied Wave Research is, as of tonight, a sponsor of the Wireless Communications Alliance. And particularly what we've worked out, and Dane, why don't you come on up here? So Dane and I have known each other since the late 90s, when I was at a startup company called Tropia, and he was helping me get his software installed on my PC. So Dane was the CEO of Applied Wave Research. And the arrangement that we've worked out is that all students at universities will be able to get access to his products, all of their products, for free. So we'll set this up, we'll send out an email through the WCA channels, we'll put something on our website, we'll figure out the mechanism, but I really want to thank Dane for doing this. It's a fantastic opportunity for the students in the audience. And I know Bobby Annucci from Carnegie Mellon has said, hey, if you can get me a couple seats of AWR, I'd appreciate it. So I think I may have met and exceeded that mission. Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Tristan Ju. Tristan is one of our directors of the WCA. He is the event chair for tonight. He's the one who, for the past few years, has pulled together the What's Hot, What's Not VC panel. So we keep this as a tradition, and you're maintaining that tradition. So thank you for your involvement and your dedication to the WCA. Without further ado, Tristan Ju, thank you.
Welcome again to our 14th annual session on mobile VC investment panel. Before we jump in, I'd like to just give you a quick overview of the WCA Mobile SIG, what we do. So we have 4 different SIGs, out of which mobile happens to be one that I share. And we put on multiple events per year, 3, sometimes 4 per year. The last one we had was in May of this year at SVD, and it was a follow-on event to last year's event, Mobile UX User Experience, where it's evolving next, focusing on not only the devices but enabling technologies that differentiate the mobile user experience, for example. This particular panel is our annual panel that focuses on where the VC money is going and where it's not going across the whole mobile ecosystem. So we're very excited to have you join us today. Before we jump in, we have a quick plug for our event sponsor. Unfortunately, David On, our sponsor for our events, and practicing attorney at law at Fenwick, was not able to join due to a last-minute commitment on business, trip that he had to go on to New York. So he extends his apologies. But I would like to give a quick intro of Fenwick before we introduce the speakers. So Fenwick has been around since 1972. In the heart of Silicon Valley, they have more than 300 attorneys focused on particularly the IT companies and heavily recently so in mobile technology areas with both private equity-backed private companies as well as public companies. Some famed name companies that they've been supporting so far to date include Amazon.com, Apple, Facebook, Google at its infant stages, HP, Intuit, Netflix, Twitter, and such companies. All very active in mobile space. And as shown in your brochures, if you happen to pick up a brochure about Fenwick's background, it gives a quite extensive background across the practices that they cover, as well as their proven track records in the IT and mobile industries. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our panel and our moderator, starting with our moderator, Danielle. Would you please stand up and maybe introduce yourself, and before we get started with the panel, and we could have you over here, stand over here. Yep. Oh, I see. Oh, okay, so would you prefer? I could actually give you one. Why don't we enable you?
So for now, just so Danielle Levitas. I'm the Group Vice President again for IDC's Mobile Consumer and Digital Media Research Practices. I've been covering consumer-related technologies and more, and digital media-related technologies for about 14 years, and more specifically focused on mobile over the last 8 or so. And so thank you very much for inviting me to participate as a moderator.
Thanks for. Hey.
Hi, I'm Tae Nam. I'm one of the partners at Storm Ventures. I've been focusing the last 13 years on mobile and also on SaaS investments. And like Tristan, also Korean, so I spent a lot of time in Korea with the mobile companies there as well.
Hi, I'm Eric Zivitz. I'm with Granite Ventures. I focus on mobile technology, wireless, infrastructure investments. Been following this industry for quite a while, both as a research analyst early on and now as a venture investor.
And I'm Steve Goldberg. Very similar background to Eric's, except when he was an analyst, he was calling on me at one of the companies I was involved with, so we go back quite a ways. The way I describe my activities, I live in all the unpopulated states where there's a lot of geography and not a lot of people, so semiconductors, wireless, networking, and that sort of stuff. Holding the fort, but as we know, the infrastructure has gotten more mature, whereas the client-side mobility, obviously, a pretty active space.
So I am John Agapenti. I'm a partner at Relay Ventures. And sort of unlike other funds, all of our partners focus on mobile. So this is our 8th fund, but our second mobile-focused fund. We started our first one in 2008 when it wasn't obvious that mobile was going to be so transformative. And we've invested in mobile payments, mobile commerce, mobile application development, mobile ad tech, you name it, sort of across the industry. Yeah, my personal background, I've been in Silicon Valley most of my life. I was really employed way back when.
Well, excellent. So can you guys all hear each of the panelists when they introduce themselves? Good on audio? Okay, excellent. So let's jump right in. Given how you guys introduced yourselves, I mean, mobile obviously is big and broad. There's devices, there's infrastructure, there's software, there's monetization, whether it's ad tech, whether there's component technologies that are obviously critical to the innovations we're seeing. We can look at it by consumer versus B2B or more business oriented. As you look at mobile today, which of those sort of major segments, or whatever major segment you want to sort of call out, are you the most passionate about and feel is the most ripe for growth and disruption over the next, call it, 2 to 3 years? So I'd like to ask each of you that. I want to start with John.
Sure. So when we started our fund, we were really thinking about mobile infrastructure, sort of platforms and key sort of enablement technologies that were enabling this whole mobile existence across all these different genres. It's kind of interesting is our second fund, we kind of stepped back away from the platform plays. We've invested in companies like real-time video exchanges like NextStage. We're invested in Accelerator, which is a platform for the enterprise. We're invested in HubNut, which is messaging infrastructure. But over this last year in our new fund that we just launched in 2012, we started thinking, how is mobile transforming vertical industries? And so we took education, and we also took connected home, connected car, mobile and healthcare, and mobile and retail, and sort of started looking at those vertical segments and started saying, how is mobile really transforming existing big industries, reinventing big industries? And that's what we're getting excited about. We've actually made investments in most all those categories.
Excellent. Steve?
Yeah, I would say certainly the age of mobility for the enterprise, and we're just, I would say, we're sort of just turning the corner, because I guess we'll talk about this later, but some of the issues related to security and just how legacy applications are served up on mobile devices. Say that, and then I think the other big exciting area is sort of the breadth of, it's not just the phone anymore. We've got all the wearables, we've got the different form factors and tablets, and just sort of, you know, the between the watches and the Google Glass type thing, and you know, whether it's an interactive device or a consumption device, I don't think it's played out at all as to, you know, what we're all going to be sort of using in 5 years. It's not clear.
Eric?
So, I think John said it well, right? I think mobile's gone from being its own little vertical area to a very horizontal opportunity. It really impacts every single industry, every market you can imagine. So it's almost a tough question to answer in that regard, right? It's ubiquitous. Me personally, I get passionate about are technologies that are challenging, that are really cutting edge, and I'm seeing a lot of that really, as Steve hinted at as well, as on the wearable side. You know, that taking these devices into these new form factors requires some real innovation on how these technologies are going to get packaged, how these devices are going to be brought to consumers, how they're going to be utilized, how they're going to be maintained and really ruggedized, because really there's something that's out there all the time, and really how it changes the whole computing paradigm, because it's changed a lot already, from sitting at a terminal to having your own personal computer, and of course in mobile, you've got this big computing device you carry around with you everywhere. I think that wearable device really takes away that last foot, if you will, right? You're always on, you're always connected, and I think it's really going to change the way humans and services, really, cloud services, are brought to market, and how humans interact with these services.
And Tiggy, where are you most excited about for startups?
For me, for startups, what I try to do is sort of figure out where the mobile trends are going, where the giants are going, and try not to be roadkill along the way, since it's hard to get in front of like an Apple or a Samsung or Google. So areas that I find that I've been focusing on is, number one, is sort of building out the stack for mobile enterprise. So I have made a series of investments related to the whole mobile enterprise space, since I feel like the giants are not really going into enterprise in the same way that they're trying to own the whole consumer experience. And then the other area that has really interested me, and just have made an investment looking for more, is the whole infrastructure that's going to be required to support streaming video. I think I know streaming video is becoming very popular in Korea, and I feel like it's also going to become very popular throughout the world, especially the United States.
Excellent. So I think one of the ways that startups tend to get a lot of attention is by not only having potentially fantastic technology, but there's either a network effect that sometimes comes into play, or a disruptive business model that makes it, you know, they challenge the incumbents or the status quo. As you look across mobile today, how do you see business models ultimately, changing and where startups can play a role. I mean, talked a little bit about the role of ad tech that came up in one of John's comments on funds. There's the role of the freemium model that's increasingly driving a lot of I think monetization as well. Where are you guys seeing business model shift, or what do you portend will shift as we look across devices, services, content, location? Enterprise, let's keep that in another bucket for a second, but even if we look at sort of the mass market around mobile. Eric, you want to start with this one?
Yes. I'm trying to think how to address that. I mean, yeah, business models are definitely changing. I mean, I think some of the most successful companies we've seen over the last several years are just that, right? It's hey, give me a old, ossified business and let me use mobile as a platform to interact with customers and shake up the status quo, right? Take Uber, for example, right? Yeah. Is Uber a mobile company? I mean, I guess it is, because people use smartphones to call ride services, or taxis, or whatever you call it. I guess they can't call them taxis, maybe. So, yeah, and you could probably go down different industries and find ways to disrupt those industries, oftentimes by allowing individuals to interact using their mobile device, or having some data store that they can access and therefore trigger that service. So yeah, I mean it's a right field. I'll leave it at that. Maybe some of the panels want to comment more.
Yeah, John.
I would say that try to tie all this together. You have sensor data, you have people doing wearable computing, you have databases, you have social information, local information. All this information is being spun out to big database software that is trying to take all this information, this digital overlay over the physical world, and do something with it. What's interesting, I think, is that when you have all this information and this kind of access to data, you can really disrupt existing business models. So, for example, just take retail, for example. If it's astonishing today to know that retail folks have no idea who's walking in their door. Like Macy's, 99% of the people that walk in through Macy's, they have no idea who's walking through the door. Wouldn't it be nice to have all the data associated with, you saw that person on mobile, that they hit the retail website, they're in their car, there's location data associated with them in transit, they geofence and they hit the front door of the retailer. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to offer that person, knowing that they spend more money with the special, customized, personalized opportunities or ways to kind of monetize them more. So if you take large data associated with potentially a car, so recently I invested in a connected car company, and they have an ODB port. You plug in, the car is a computer on wheels. All that information has never been existed today. Can you imagine reselling of that car based on the real data associated with that car? So we have all these sensors, all this information. How do we use that information to actually generate really interesting economic value for both personalized consumers and disrupting existing car industries and taking business models and kind of disrupting them based on all this information? And so those, I think, are really kind of interesting opportunities that you're trying to find this disruption with the proliferation of all this data.
So let's stick with the sensors piece for a moment. So I think we can all attest to just the sheer number of sensors that are going to the existing mobile devices, let alone new ones, and then other objects that are around us that we don't even think twice about. As we look to some of these advancements, and so let's hone in a little on location as an example. So there's location-based technologies that are in all of our mobile devices and part of what makes them work the way they do. And then now we're starting to talk about proximity and sensors and getting to that last 3 meters, not just X, Y, but Z. And so it's who cares if you're going past Safeway? It's more if you're in the aisle about to make a decision about toothpaste, let's say. Now there's retailers we know are doing a lot of trial work in this space in terms of testing out beacons and how do they actually have a call to action to a consumer or to customer when they walk in, and to get them to actually interact or use an app. Just even looking at this space, how do you see retail, for example, getting transformed because of mobility? And do you see specific opportunities for startups or specific companies you're looking at and investing in? Because from where I sit looking at proximity, I mean, there's, probably about 42 companies, roughly 300 million of your dollars, so to speak, that are invested in those companies. So, anyone want to say? You want to?
Yeah, I'll-
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, actually, when it comes to mobile and retail, I actually think of a different use case, which is, I think, having the biggest impact on retail, and that's showroom. It's talking to the people in the big box retailers and all the basically brick and mortar retailers. That's the biggest threat. For basically just their showroom for a mobile device, scan the barcode, get the best price, and just buy right there. So I think that from a consumer standpoint, it turns out for mobile, that's like one of the top value propositions, and it's transforming retail.
So I'm interested just to key on that. So where I think retailers need to go, right? So I've been in a very famous retail establishment, and I had to pick out the right color. And of course, my wife knows the right color. I don't. So I take a picture, and then the person comes up and says, "Oh, you can't take pictures." And so I thought that was kind of astonishing that someone would actually say, like, "Listen, we're giving you the Heisman on showrooming in my store." And I think where this is going to end up, though, is that consumers now have power in the way that they shop has completely changed. And actually, what you'll see is the best stores will be the ones that will help the customer show them. They'll come in and they'll say, "Listen, let me help you get a deal, and I'll price match that. But oh, by the way, you're probably going to buy 4 or 5 other things in the store." Can you imagine the customer loyalty experience that would generate if I walked into a store and they gave me a discount based on price matching to Walmart, and I would come right back to that store. So people, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a pushback first, and then eventually people will realize that the consumer really does have tremendous power in their hand, and they either have to embrace it and try to use that for customer loyalty in different ways, or they'll just be fighting it, and the people that don't fight it will win. The retailers will figure that out will win. So I think, anyway, just on that short range.
Yeah, and I would basically say that it all sounds great to do this, but from what I've seen, it's still relatively difficult. I think Eric touched on it. It's still relatively difficult to walk into a store, like a supermarket, for example, and to have the supermarket know what aisle you're in and what product you're in front of and which way you're facing. I just saw a company within the last couple of weeks. And the challenge has been, you can sort of do it if there's infrastructure, which has been a historical problem because very expensive, and the ROI, if it's more than a few years, then companies don't want to do it if they've got 10,000 stores, et cetera, et cetera. This was a completely client-based solution that just used all of the inertial navigation devices in your phone, the gyros and the accelerometers, and literally being calibrated once a day or within a couple of miles. You could literally walk down the aisles and it would resolve you to within 2 inches using standard cell phone technology. And based on holding the phone, looking at the phone, it would know which way you're looking. So, I mean, this is all signal processing. It's all estimation algorithms, and from the communications world, the stuff that some of us did 20 years ago. There's now enough horsepower on the phone and enough different sensors to get all that location. I think one of the cool things is, what was just discussed here, you almost couldn't do it. Interestingly, it came from a project to locate firemen in burning buildings, which is a really, really difficult problem. And so the guy figured that out and then brought it now to retail.
So beacons aren't necessary?
So beacons aren't necessary. So this is cool.
So it is closer than you think, or than you initially
No,
thought?
what I'm trying to say is, there are 2 things. One, it's been very difficult to do these kinds of things. We can imagine them and all of the bundling and the things you can do to get customer loyalty, to know what they're doing and to offer them instant offers when they're standing in front of the Cheerios. But basically, we don't have it because it was too hard to do and too expensive. We're right there.
Okay.
And while in retail, beacons serve a different role too, by the way, than just that. But there's one more dimension here, which is the customer, right? So, John's example, was it Macy's? Yeah, Macy's would love to know that. Where you are, when you're walking in the store, what you're looking at, when you leave, what kind of car you drive, what size underwear you wear. Does the customer want Macy's and all that? So maybe some do, maybe some don't, right? And so far there's been a lot of big blunders here, right? Nordstrom got in a lot of trouble for basically filming their customers as they walked around the store and perused items, and it was a big mess they had to deal with. So Yeah, and I think consumers are interested in, for sure, but they want to work with people they can trust too. So, and it's a fine line, right? If you blow the trust dynamic, you're out of luck. You know, it's hard to get that back.
The whole privacy, so I wear white Kirkland underwear. And I really care about that privacy. So what's interesting though is that privacy is a big issue. But I think it's fascinating because one of my CEOs is a very young CEO, he's like 21, and he says, I know it's creepy, but I'll give it to you anyway. And like, so then us gray hair guys, we're kind of really weirded out about it. But the stigma attached to this privacy will have to play itself out. It's a big deal and it has to be done right. Opt-in has to happen. But it's an interesting play.
I think the idea that young people don't care about privacy is a fallacy, and I think a lot of surveys have proven that out. I think if given the choice between here's a service that respects your privacy and one that doesn't, they'll always pick the one that does. Right now, they don't have a lot of choices, and I think that's a market opportunity. I think if somebody comes up with solutions and services that respect the customer's privacy, they're going to win the customer.
I think Snapchat is an example of that.
It's a good example. Yeah, exactly.
There's an interesting statistic.
Conceptually, anyway.
A woman that goes into someone did a survey, they said a woman that goes into a store, they only 33% of the time they want someone to actually come up and get and tell them like about offers and what's going on. But 66% would like to see something on their phone. So I do think that there's going to be like this consumer, candy. If the value proposition is interesting enough, they're willing to give up their privacy to a certain extent if they want that. If they want that kind of.
I don't think it's about privacy. Again, the word I use is trust. I think that's really important. I think people are willing to disclose information to a trusted party, and it's really. I mean, who trusts Facebook? Anybody? Anybody trust Google?
Yeah, but you know what's interesting about
I mean, people use these services all the time, right? I get that, but at the same point, they've already lost trust.
And here's, I'm sure there's probably a top 5 list of problems, but here's one of the challenges. So we talk about security in terms of privacy. So there's a number of companies out there trying to figure out you've got your mobile device, so you've got your personal information side, that personality, and then you've got your business personality. And there's companies that literally, with a swipe of the screen, will take you to your company called Enterprise doing that. There's a few others. I just heard about another one just the other day. So you move over here, you're on the business side, and the business manages all of your apps and everything that's going on. And then you go over here and you own everything. So your IT department can only get here, but you can't change anything over there. So you keep the church and state separate. What's interesting is, on the enterprise side, which is kind of changing horses here, you've got just the opposite. We're in a company called Authority, which is sort of a good housekeeping seal of approval for apps. And it was, the initial play was, it was for malware, just to make sure that it was safe to put, new apps on your phone. Turns out 99% of the problems have nothing to do with malware, and it has to do with policy. And it's the policy that we're just talking about. Is my contact list being distributed? Is my location being distributed? Which is what we were just talking about. And on the enterprise side of things, there's unbelievable paranoia. So one of the challenges, you've got the center of the universe, your phone, and one side's pulling you this way for more information, and one side's pulling you this way for less information. So it's definitely I'll just say it's not trivial to solve that problem, because if you solve it over here, you break it over here.
And I think things like containerization, we've heard about technologies like this, but they haven't been meaningfully deployed by enterprises. But security is, whether it's is privacy the right word versus trust? I'm a big believer in convenience trumps everything 99% of the time for 99% of people. So I'm willing to give up something to get something of value in return, whether that's, I probably would not give my information to Macy's, but I'd give it to Anthropology. Like, you pick your vendor. That being said, I guess talking a little bit about security, the focus on security these days is very much enterprise oriented, and I think it's understandable. We want to keep, as much data and corporate assets secure. As you look to startups in this space, or startups that are trying to, frankly, even transition from mobile to consumer, or consumer to enterprise, or enterprise to mobile, do you really think startups still have a play here to have a meaningful impact in terms of the security aspects of mobile, or at this point, is it now getting consolidated in the big behemoths of your SAPs and your IBMs, and granted, that's an exit strategy, but how do you guys see security? It's obviously still a critical and right challenge, both the technology as well as the policy management, but do startups have a viable place here?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, security, whether it's mobile or wired, cloud, security is like a perfect spot for startups. And the reason is that enterprises and other service providers believe that the best are willing to buy point security solution. And it's an ideal market for startups as a result, versus other places in which they're definitely looking for full platforms, which is much harder for a startup to enter.
I mean, it's also an arms race too, right? So there's always new opportunities, there's new things to secure, there's new threat vectors. Every time there's a new technology developed, that's a new portal into the asset, whatever the asset might be, whatever the data asset might be. So yeah, there's a long, I think, a proven history of success by startups in this space. I think that will continue too.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the crossover between consumer, the box and the drop box, and the crossover between products that we're offering as consumers that we potentially would leverage in our business life. Lots of products out there to help enterprises deal with those problems. Kind of the modern day extensions of VPNs, allowing you either to encrypt data as you're looking at it, so you don't store anything on your mobile device, or some mechanisms you just do real-time streaming and then say there's a whole bunch of variations. And the amazing thing to me, I would say literally in the last 3 months, I've probably seen half a dozen companies dealing with enterprise data consumption on tablets and accessing various databases or storage locations in an enterprise. And they all come in with, oh, we've got these 10 customers, and they're all Fortune 100s. And there's these 10 aligned with this company, and these 10 aligned with this company, which basically tells me there's no winner yet.
Yeah.
That the market hasn't quite figured it out.
So if you guys look at the mobile enterprise space, there's security, there's device management, there's application development, deployment. I mean, there's a lot of different challenges from an enterprise standpoint, but it's also opportunity. Across mobile enterprise, I mean, security is obviously a critical issue and investment area and has lots of legs to it. Where else are you guys placing your bets in terms of investment? Do you want to start that one?
Yeah, so in my case, I'm an investor in Mobile Iron, and so I look at what Mobile Iron's doing as sort of a foundation. It's sort of it's management and security platform for the enterprise, and we now have 6,000 enterprise customers. We're adding 600 a quarter, and so viewing that as sort of the platform, they've launched an ecosystem partnership where there's like 200 to 300 companies now part of the ecosystem. And there, it's a perfect platform for which inject other sort of security systems like antivirus and others, or anti-malware. And then, so based on that, then I've been really looking into sort of this whole area of app development, sort of content delivery, and so invested in a company to make it easy to build mobile apps connected to your back-end system. And so that company is in Boston called Moto, and so we're just sort of building out the stack in this manner. Trying to sort of guess where the enterprise is going to go and try to be a step ahead.
I think that it's very reminiscent of the days when I was in Netscape. So CIOs and large corporations, the web came around and they said, okay, the CEO said we need a website. We'll do the website, and we'll hire some consultants to do that. That was great. And then they realized that this website really is just how our users, our consumers are actually interacting with this, and our partners want to interact with it this way. So all of a sudden that kind of became client-server development, became web development, and then bringing those kind of tools in-house. Same thing is happening with mobile. Like, we need an app. CEO, we need an app. Let's go get an app, and then line of business starts building applications, and then all of a sudden the CIO in the next year or two, this is what we're seeing, is that CIO is starting to see all these little homegrown projects popping up, and they all have different platforms, and they can't rationalize what's going on in their shop. And now they're being asked to kind of support the back-end systems and everything. So that there's the delineation between mobile development and software development is completely going away. It's really all about mobile development because 40–50% of web traffic is mobile. So they're trying to, CIOs are now starting to come back and say, if I don't do something in this area, I'm going to have a big mess on my hands in the next 3 years. And so really interesting opportunities for, platforms that I still think that the big incumbents are slow and they're not quite there. We invested in Accelerator in the Storm, we think daily.
Somebody could really aim to solve this particular issue of marrying analytics. I mean, you can talk a lot about big data, but I think there's a lot of companies that still don't know what to do with their data, don't even know all the data assets they have, let alone how to organize it. So what are you guys waiting for? What are you looking for? What are you eager to, hear some pitches on, so to speak?
Well, I think on that opens sort of other doors that are just massive, like you said, pillars of other things which might take us off the focus on mobile. I think it takes it, the big data kind of sort of draws you to the attention of, so what is the data and where does it come from? And that gets back to sort of what, if you extend mobile to other devices other than our phone, and back to the Internet of Things and instrumenting things, and whether it's time series kind of data where you're instrumenting as objects are moving, or in verticals where you're monitoring factories or factory automation, or whether it's a manufacturing operation, or an oil refinery. That's all very similar kind of client infrastructure kind of connection, just like the mobile device we were talking about on the consumer side. So I think it's really a question of, I think everyone's established that you can process the data now. There's, Moore's Law's got us there. We've got databases that can support it. There's enough memory to support it. You can get the data in the right place. I think we're kind of in the place now where you got to figure out what do you want to do with it.
Right.
And that's probably behind the curve. There's just a lot of discussion about we can get the data. Well, okay. So I think now that we've got all this incredible mobile ecosystem, maybe the algorithmic guys have to catch up a bit.
Yeah, I think it's true. It does take us maybe a little bit off the mobile topic, but it is, I think, ideas
Well,
around
mobile's
data.
providing so much more data.
Yes.
Data visualization, real-time data analytics, things that make this stuff more immediate, more practical for the enterprise are the areas of interest that I would cite. But again, once again, those aren't true mobile technologies, but clearly we're really dragging that data, or mobile devices are dragging a lot of data in to enable those sort of service, or actually require those sort of technologies.
One of the largest retailers I've recently interviewed, it's the largest retailer that has a lot to do with the Thanksgiving parade. And I was asking, how many data analysts do you have, on your staff? It's like 30–40% of their mobile staff is data people. Crazy numbers. So that tells me, okay, they see value in the data, but they're having to spend a lot of time and resources to try to get to it.
And homegrown.
And so I think
they're party.
And who knows? I do think that those are big problems that are just hard to fix, or hard to do. But I think you're right on.
Yeah, I think half of Palo Alto is infested with Palantir, right? Half the buildings in downtown Palo Alto are data scientists crunching on numbers that we don't know about. Yeah.
So we're going to open it up to the audience in just a moment for some questions. So I guess the last question before I start handing it over to our attendees. We started off talking about one of the areas being really exciting, wearables. Talk about more big data. A lot of these things are sort of more low-end devices that are shipping, tens of millions of units. Your Fitbits and your smartwatch, but when we start looking at things like smartwatches or Google Glass or more intelligent higher-end wearables, I'm a big believer it's going to take quite a bit of time to get there. Over the next 2–3 years, we still need to see, I think, a lot of innovation around that. Things that seem mundane: battery technology, display technology, making sure the aesthetics are right. What is that? What's the ultimate, right form of app? Yeah, and what's that app ecosystem that needs to be developed and created? So you can agree, disagree. I'm all for both, hearing both sides of it. Wearables are exciting, and I don't think any of us would deny it, and I think will be disposable wearables. I think each of us will have, in 7 years' time, multiple wearables in person that we'll use depending on our modality, if you will. What's your take on wearables, and what are you most excited about maybe in a shorter horizon, more like a 3-year horizon versus where the bets are longer?
So I would say, the way I think about these technology stacks is it driving a new behavior that is different and new? Like, I think mobile has really changed retail and how consumers buy things and interact. Now are expecting to interact in the store. Google Glass, like, I don't think it's demonstrated a behavioral change that is demonstrated itself yet. So I'm looking for, what is, by wearing wearables, what's really going to happen. We invested in a new company called Scanadu. It's pretty exciting technology, and essentially it's essentially like the Star Trek tricorder. So you remember that thing that Spock used to hover over, and they would tell you. So this is a device you put up to your temple. It has 2 sensors and 1 sensor on here. It creates a circuit, and it'll tell you your blood pressure, your heart rate, your EKG, your stress level, and 3 other things. FDA potentially approved, right? That is an interesting, device that will make a difference in people's lives, because that will be, you can do that in the field and all kinds of different applications. They also have an application for taking a test strip that costs like $1. It has 12 essays on it. You can take a photo of it, syncs up to the cloud, comes back, and it'll tell you if you're pregnant, if you've got a drug problem. So there are new technologies that are coming out, really exciting stuff that I think are fundamentally going to change how medicine is applied, and it's really using this device in attachment with some of these other things that I think are really exciting. The whole wearable stuff I think is interesting, and it'll show off some information, but like, what change is it really going to drive in terms of consumer behavior? I want to wait to see that before I get overly excited.
Eric?
I just think the promise of wearables is just what you described, right? It's having a device. What's the state of the art today? It's not the state of the art, but Fitbit, right? Everyone's got Fitbit. A lot of people do anyway. Very simple device, a pedometer, right? It measures your steps. It turns out it's not very accurate, though, right? People are actually measuring that versus an accurate distance measurement and saying, that's actually very close, but maybe it doesn't matter. So it's all relative, and as long as people keep tracking this data, it's interesting that they're flying off the shelves. A lot of people are buying these things, right? They clearly have it's a feature and a product they like a lot. So I think the idea of taking that device to that level, right, where it's more of a there are a lot of interesting companies that are doing things, and they're more stealth modes. I don't want to disclose a lot of stuff on the form factors, but if one of the drawbacks of Fitbit is it's not touching your skin, right? It's clipped onto your clothing. So you can imagine wearables that have more skin contact can generate all that data you're talking about and do it on an ongoing basis and give you that sort of personal information. And you might consider it, maybe you're too focused on yourself, but on the other hand, there's real applications and there's real cases when you'd want that. Google Glass, I think that's probably the wrong idea. That's probably an interesting product for more of an industrial application, I've always thought, right? Use that in a hands-free type of thing where heads-up display, versus walking around Palo Alto like a weirdo.
Well, there was a company, I know just about everybody in this room would remember it. I always think of it in this discussion as Simple Technologies. They're the guys that made the supermarket local region. They were in the market of kind of industrial handheld thing. It's the same guys that sort of made the gadget that makes the printer at the car rental thing. So you stand there and so kind of audit what John was talking about. What behaviors or what things does it enhance? New ways to do things. So I totally agree with Eric that probably the industrial application for the wearables would be the early market. But there's a company out there, just to push the envelope a little more, that sounds more like the Star Trek, the tricorder. So there's a company called Meta, and it's basically a competitor of Google Glass, really, whether they say it or not. But what they're doing is integrating augmented reality and projector technology. So for example, I like to work on the car. So you're laying over the car, you're wearing these glasses, you're gonna, I'll just make a big thing, you're gonna replace you wouldn't do this at home. Maybe you're replacing to the starter, that's something I would do. And you're looking up there, it projects where all the connections are and where all the bolts are, like right out of the manual. as you're looking at it. So you're looking in that direction, it knows what angle you're looking at, and then as you take it out, then when you put the new one in, it shows you exactly how to place it in there. And instructions are coming up as you're talking, so you don't have to be, I now have my computer there, you know, I got my YouTube videos that tell me how to do it. It would be hands-free, be able to, the heads-up display kind of thing. So I think they're right at this is not proprietary, it's on their website, but they're exactly where, Danielle, where you were saying, it's a form factor thing, it's a battery power thing, they're trying to do a lot, but they're gonna get there. And that's pretty science fiction-y. Yeah.
The area of wearables that I'm fascinated by is something that, it's an extension of what John was talking about, is sort of finding something with a compelling use case, and that's in the whole area of sort of things related to healthcare. You know, there's a huge investment going on in all these biosensors, and all these biosensors are gonna get embedded within wearables. And then there'll be these value-added services tied to it, you know, whether you're, you know, measuring your insulin level on a, you know, per second basis, per minute basis, whatever. But I think that's gonna be very sticky, it's gonna be very high value, and I think in a few years, everyone will be wearing a customized wearable tied to your particular health needs.
And I think it'll be a frighteningly short time before wearables become embeddables, implantables.
So, Mike, to,
Yeah, we'll,
I think we can open the floor up for questions. We've got plenty of time, so I think we've got about 30 minutes to sort through questions.
so the way that we'll handle this, folks, is I'll ask Danielle to point at the person who's next, and we'll bring you the microphone. Please use the microphone to speak. Keep the microphone until you're done, so that the rest of the audience can hear you. Okay? There's a question over here.
Should I wait for your mic?
Yes.
Okay, I just got back from Singapore where we had a conference about what's hot, and I always go to different places to find different things. Most of the stuff was the same. However, in Singapore, they had two things that you guys didn't mention. They mentioned nanotech, and they were really hot on that, and they talked that Cambridge University is doing great things. And the other thing was dock in a box. Do you guys have any investments or thoughts about that? I have a daughter who just is graduating from med school, so that would frighten me, and all that money, and if you can buy it in the computer, she's obsolete already.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on dock in the box, I mean, basically, if you have great video streaming and biosensors with the wearables, then I think you have basically the foundation to have, you know, real-time dock in the box.
and anybody on Nanotech? I mean, Nanotech's something we can talk about for
15
semi
years.
space for.
You mean from a materials perspective? Is that's?
Well, what's your
Technology,
question?
not carbon.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things you can do with nanotech and, you know, related to batteries or circuit design, flex circuits. I mean, you know, I think it's a technology that continues to make forward progress and slowly becomes embedded in the technologies that we would invest in, but they rarely have opportunities to invest in nanotechnology as a pure play.
Yeah, we've had
As far as technology.
Well, I would say it this way, I don't think a lot of great things going on. We made a few investments. We made an investment 10 years ago in a company called Nanosys, and they actually make a material that's used in LCD televisions to enhance, you know, the colors, all kinds of things, and battery cathodes. But I would say this. For the most part, the learning at Venrock has been these technologies, the materials kinds of technologies, are real basic science. You know, if it's at 10 or 15 years, it makes it relatively difficult for venture investments. So, you know, we've had some shots at it, and, you know, we've done okay. But as Eric said, these things, these are some of the things, battery technology, I heard someone say, well, I spent a lot of time over the last 4 years looking at batteries. It takes 20 years for a new battery technology to come to market. And so, yeah, great stuff, good things, maybe not bullseye for venture, you know, kind of pick and choose, tough market.
So there's,
Great conversation so far.
So far.
Uh-oh, this is it.
Still blood.
Great technology, great discussion so far. I had several questions, but one, I guess that I'm more interested in your perspective because you're investing for not only here in America, but how do the differences in, say, the U.S. market and the European market kind of guide some of your investments? For instance, if it's Tehe, with Mobile Iron, BYOD used to be, big here in the U.S. and some say it could be going down, but in Europe, you talk to CIOs over there like BYOD. I own the device, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, for Mobile Iron in particular, I can say that we felt no slowdown at all with the European economic crisis. Growth in Europe has been as strong as in North America. We've seen basically all the major enterprises, whether they're like Swiss pharma companies, German auto companies, are all moving to mobile, especially tablets, and then it's important for them to then manage and secure them.
So maybe ask it a little differently even, do you see in mobile enterprise related business opportunities, again, security, whether it's application deployment, containerization, you name it, any dramatic differences from major region to region? I mean, obviously there's maturity differences, but then there's also just, differences in terms of how devices are deployed to the, employees.
Oh, good, you was thinking. I was gonna say, I don't know about enterprise, but I think, they're definitely, obviously they're distinct markets. Things are very different. Look, we have to talk about commerce, for example, right? I think like mobile commerce is likely to take off, and probably has, in, call it rest of the world, mostly Asia, versus the US, right? In a place like the US, we have such an established and a mature commerce infrastructure, right? It's so easy to pull out your credit card anywhere and, swipe your card and off you
We're
go.
overbanked, right?
You were-
I was
yeah.
gonna say versus the underbanked.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you go to different countries where that infrastructure doesn't exist, and the doors wide open for opportunities like that.
So Daniel, I guess you asked the question, do we see difference in uptakes in things like containers or things like that, enterprise app stores? That we don't. The things that we do see quite a lot of difference is two areas. One is iOS versus Android. iOS is very strong in the United States. You go to East Asia, Android just dominates completely. I mean, you really don't hear much about iOS in those markets. The other is perception of cloud security. US companies are much more accepting to have data stored in the cloud, especially a third-party cloud. I know that like in certain countries, the companies just want it stored on-prem. It doesn't matter how much it costs. They view it as protection not only from the US government, but from their own local government as well. So if they can afford it, cost is not the issue. Especially when it comes to communications, where their executives are, who they're talking to and all that, they want that data on-prem.
And then just adding one interesting note, so I'm on the board of a company that sells wireless components to mostly Chinese customers. And what's amazing is there are more tablet sales. I mean, there's a company called All Winner that sells more tablets than Apple sells worldwide. I mean, and then we're talking about Wi-Fi only, but under $50. I mean, so the stuff that we look at that's, I guess the prices are coming down, but we're thinking several $100s. The mass market there is happening very quickly for these kinds of devices. So it wasn't exactly the question you asked, but the fact that the proliferation of mobile devices at prices that are consistent with those markets is happening really, really quickly.
Are they fork versions of Android?
I think they're really real deal.
Okay. So John, earlier you talked about the retail store worry about becoming a display store for the consumers. Have you also noticed that a lot of stores basically have the unique codes for all the items?
Yeah.
Therefore, nobody else could be, they'll never ever find the same product on other companies. But have actually those companies ever used the code for themselves? For example, like similar to Amazon, you're looking at this item, find out if anybody actually purchased the item, or finding other items can go with this item. actually from internal sales?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have a great answer about like whether the codes are used. I know that people are trying to put different codes and there's different stickers over them, and so there's definitely a pushback. We're seeing that from a lot of retailers to kind of prevent this showrooming, but it doesn't prevent someone from taking the product and sort of just typing in what the product is. And so I think that we'll still go through this cycle where retailers will push back on, on their traditional paths, and there'll be a set of retailers that will figure out how to turn this into a customer loyalty and engagement platform and actually know who their consumers are. I think that's interesting. On the flip side of all that, what is also, I think, interesting is that while there's 65% smartphone penetration in the United States, there's studies that show only 10% of the users actually do some of this activity. So, use their phone in advanced ways where they're actually barcode scanning and doing these kinds of things. So, actually 90% of people that own a smartphone probably use it for very rudimentary things that they don't realize the power that they have in their hands. So we're still in the early days, in the early innings of this transformation, I think, which gives the retailers a little bit of breathing room, but I think it won't be long before they're running out.
There's a question up here, and I'll come to him.
So one of the things you guys didn't really touch on was mobile payments, and on that front, I guess the thing I'd like to ask is whether you think current hardware platforms are sufficient to really get a good implementation of mobile payments, or whether something's needed on the hardware side.
Or do we just have clear options? And no clear standard or...
Yeah, I think mobile payments are an important thing. There's a lot talked about near field communication and whether the hardware really needs to kind of pick up. There's recently some new startups that are trying to transform your card into a multiple card, and it connects with your phone. But I kind of come back to what is the convenience to the user? At the end of the day, like most of the mobile payments that are happening today in North America are the ones that are happening at Starbucks. Like, because
It's not a small number.
No, but there's a use case there that seems to work really well, and people will go to Starbucks all the time, and so there's so I think it will grow. I think it will grow considerably, but I don't know if there's a hardware issue that's preventing it. I think it's more like a consumer, like I really have to have this on my phone kind of issue versus a technology enablement question. So that's my take on it.
I think the comment that Danielle made earlier, you said the overbanked and I said the underbanked. I don't think this is a new concept, but the fact is we've got credit cards and we've got other payment mechanisms here and we're comfortable with them and we all have. Okay. Most of us have a relationship with a bank. It's a rest of world issue where they don't have bank accounts, they have no mechanism for transacting. And that's where I think the value of the mobility and the mobile payments matters. And I think that's where you see more of it. There's a lot of it in Mexico. I think there's a lot in some African countries. It's the only way they can do it. Probably not percentage-wise a lot, but there's a lot of activity. But I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah. And to the point earlier about wanting to see a change in behavior, it's if it requires a fundamental difference in behavior and there's not a distinct benefit, it's hard to get that behavior to change. And there's not.
I guess I would question whether that's an age thing though, because I have a 21-year-old son who probably knows way more about his phone than his credit card. And I'm not convinced that carrying credit cards is natural to him as it is to us.
Good work, Dad.
I think what you'll find though is like as retailers get really smart, like Walmart's really smart about how they use their app. Their app, you start out at home and they figure out what do? Well, you actually create lists. And so you take your list and then as soon as you're geofenced into the store, it actually transforms, the phone application transforms into now a store finder to help you find those items that you just did. Now the natural transition is actually do the payment at the end. And so, but all those other things kind of tying together really make you maybe want to use that to kind of complete the transaction versus I've already got the stuff in my basket, I can either use my phone or I can pull my wallet out. I think they all have to kind of come together for the value to the consumer to be really changed. Those are just...
Good question.
Technology I'm monitoring that actually impacts, I think, impact payment the most is Bitcoin.
Not so much mobile.
Really trying to
Why
stir
not?
things up, aren't you?
Why not?
Some question over here.
Going back to the issue of healthcare, this is buzzword going around called mHealth, mobile health. Do you guys believe this is a real trend or just a fad? If you're interested in that space, do you see more of a consumer and a patient-oriented, opportunity, or more of a, caregiver, provider type of deals?
We do about 30% of our investments are in healthcare. And these days, about 80% of the healthcare investments are in healthcare IT, which kind of includes the category of mobile health.